Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Hope you all had a lovely weekend and you're feeling refreshed and ready to go for our English lessons this week. So we're going to try something a little bit different this week, which is going to be me talking whilst the PowerPoint's on. So hopefully everything will be really clearly explained and you'll know what you're doing. So the first job this Monday morning, please, everybody, is to write in today's date like we'd normally do, and because you haven't got a context label, if you could either just read through, or if you're a speedy writer, then you can write out today's learning objective as well. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to pause the video, pause me nattering on whilst you do those two jobs. Press pause. Okay, so hopefully you've got those two things written in your book nice and neatly, and you'll see that today's learning objectives are to find features of an argument text and to plan my own argument text. And hopefully everybody, we will also get on to writing some bits as well. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So you've got here on your screen a letter, which I'm hopefully you can see nice and clearly. And what I'd like you to do now is read through the text and think about, well, what is the purpose? What is this trying to do? I'm going to read the first paragraph with you, and then I'd like you to pause the video and carry on reading. So off we go together for the first part. Dear Sir or Madam, I have recently been informed of your plans to cancel the curbside collection of plastic waste, an idea I vehemently oppose. I am confident that, upon understanding the consequences of this decision, the Council will abolish plans to make such cuts. Okay, so pause the video, carry on reading. There's some tricky words in there to try and make out, but have a think. What's the purpose of the text? Off you go. Okay, everybody, so I'm hoping we realised that that was an argument or a persuasive text. So they wanted to complain or persuade the reader that they're making the wrong decision, all about the plastic waste. And they're all the way through there, they were trying to convince the person to change their decision and prove, using lots of evidence, why they were wrong. But what we're going to look at on the next slide was what techniques did the writer use to convince us. So if we have a look here, we've got the same letter just there for you, the letter that you've just read. And I would like you to try and spot the features in the text that I've listed down the left-hand side there. So you can see that I've asked you to look for precise language. Now, when I say precise language, I mean language that is specific to what they're talking about. So if we're talking about things like curbside and bin collection, things like curbside and council would be words that would be precise language that is all about that particular subject. Formal language. Now, formal language is just using our posh voices. So not our playground voices, but the voices that hopefully you would speak to very important people with. So using formal language such as consequences, abolish, things like that. Then looking at cohesion. Now cohesion I've put there could be adverbs, it could be conjunctions. Okay, now we've been looking at cohesion last week, so we're going to continue that into this week. So what adverbs can you find? What conjunctions can you find? There should be lots of ones within sentences and across paragraphs to link the whole letter together. Okay, evidence. Evidence is really important when you're trying to convince somebody to do things. If you haven't got any evidence, people might not listen to you. So you need to really explain carefully why, so that you convince them. And then a clear structure. So look, how is the letter laid out? Well, hopefully all of you can see that there's lots of different paragraphs there. Have a look at the paragraphs. What's the job of each paragraph? Okay, so I'd like you to pause the video now and read through it. You don't need to print it out and you don't need to do it on a sheet or anything like that. But I'd like to have a scan through now. What precise language can you find? What formal language can you find? Etc, etc. So just pause the video for a couple of minutes and have a think, right, how many of each one can I find? This might help you for our next activity. Okay, off you go then. Okay, everybody, so I'm hoping that you found lots of examples there. I'm going to really quickly now whiz through a few of the different sections that we've just been talking about. So if we have a look back at that very first paragraph, we've got dear sir or madam. Now, sir or madam is the formal way to start a letter if we don't know what their name is. So that might be something that we need to use. Then in the first paragraph, that is our introductory paragraph. We're explaining why we are writing this letter. So it's really important that we state exactly how we feel and what is going on there. The next paragraph, we are adding more evidence. So we're laying out now our evidence to why we feel that way. So if we have a look at it, in order to cancel the current effective curbside collection, the council intends to provide costly additional bins. This is sure to greatly impact the council's budget with detrimental effect. Now you can see just in that first couple of sentences in that paragraph, everybody, that they've made sure that they've used loads of formal language. And it does sound really fancy. They're trying to impress by using really nice vocabulary and stuff that's specific to what they're talking about. So you can see as well how this is sure to greatly impact. So they're adding even more adjectives to make sure that they get their matter of opinion across. Okay, now if you look down, so that paragraph there is stating lots of those facts. The next paragraph and the next paragraph do exactly the same thing. So they don't change their opinion. All the way through, they're saying that they're against this. They're not saying anything else. They do not want this to happen, do they? If you look at that 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph, you can see that they're using nice conjunctions there, like additionally. Additionally tells us that they're adding more to the argument, doesn't it? And some of you may have also spotted in that paragraph that we've got some questions in there as well. Questions are a really good way so that you're questioning the person you're writing the letter to. Well, have you done the right thing here, or are you actually making the wrong decision? Okay, the final paragraph. What does the final paragraph do? Okay, just have a little look for me for a moment at that final paragraph. Ultimately, the public are adamantly opposed to the council's decision and demand a meeting to present all relevant facts. Once these are presented, I am confident that the council will see the error in their ways and revoke the decision. Just have a little think. What is the purpose of that final paragraph? Okay, I'm hoping that some of you there have thought, well, we know that's the conclusion. That's the conclusion of our letter. They're summarising everything they've said earlier on in the letter, and they're now saying, well, what do they want to happen next? Okay, and they're making sure that at the end of this letter, they have really clearly defined what do we want this person to do about it. And then they've signed off, yours faithfully. Okay, so what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be writing our own persuasive text. And the persuasive text that we are going to be writing is a letter to Captain Fitzroy, explaining the reasons against taking Jemmy Button. And we are going to be the English public. So cast your minds back to last week when we read, I'm trying to get it on the camera there, when we read our Jemmy Button book. Okay, and it was Captain Fitzroy, wasn't it, aboard the HMS Beagle, who found Jemmy Button. Okay, and he was a native boy from Tierra del Fuego, if I've pronounced that right, I hopefully have. And he takes him back to England because his objective was to civilise Jemmy Button. Okay, so he wanted to make him more like the English people in their fancy suits and going to watch concerts and things like that. That's what he wanted to do. But was that the right thing to do? Should they have taken that poor little boy from his island and taken him away and travelled for all those months and years that he was away from home? Was that a fair thing to do to that child? Okay. And what I'd like us to think from the perspective of today is the English public, so us, okay? So it's what you think about that. And I'm sure when we read this story last week that lots of you were sitting there going, they can't do that, they can't take him away. And I think you'd be completely right. Right now, this wouldn't be allowed, would it? You wouldn't be able to do something like this, unless, of course, that person wanted to and their parents agreed to it. But what I'd like you to do now, I'd like you to cast your minds back to last week. Okay, cast your mind back to the story that we read last week. If you can't remember it, everybody, remember that you can re-watch the video on YouTube. So if you can't quite remember it, just type in Jemmy Button, okay, and it's Literacy Counts that did the video for us. So if you want to watch that video again to refresh your memory, that might help. So Jemmy Button Literacy Counts on YouTube, and it will tell you the story again if you're struggling to remember it. Okay, but what I'd like you to do now before you pause the video is to write down in your books, at least I think you can come up with 3 reasons why Captain Fitzroy was wrong to take Jemmy Button. Why was that a bad decision to take Jemmy Button away from the island? Okay, so pause the video and I would like you to write down at least 3 reasons in your book. Off you go. Okay, everybody, so hopefully you've written down at least 3 reasons. So let's go through a few reasons together in case your brain was frozen this morning. So you might have thought about that Jemmy Button would feel really out of place. So he's not going to feel like he's in the right place. And if you can remember in the book, if I can find the right page now, when he arrived in England for the first time, he thought it was a very, very strange place. And some of you might be able to remember the language. I can't find the right page. Here it is. So it was this page in the book. Can't see it very well on my very small little screen in the corner, but it said once they arrived, Jemmy Button was surprised to find that the visitors' homes were made mostly of rocks, some stacked in towers taller than the tallest tree in the forest. So already it tells us that he was feeling a little bit out of place about the surroundings of being there. It also told us, this page is really quite clever in the way it displays the different imagery. It also tells us there were so many people. Jemmy Button wasn't used to being in that kind of environment, in that crowded environment. So you could have the reason of you were taking him out of his, he felt out of place because there were so many people. He wasn't in his homeland. I've popped on the screen in front of you. He didn't have the right clothes. So if you remember, they took him shopping. They took him shopping in the shops in London and dressed him up in a suit so that he would fit in better with the English people. Okay, so that would make him feel out of place, wouldn't it? The fact that when they arrived on the island, when Darwin and Fitzroy arrived on the island, he had no idea, Jemmy Button. He didn't know where he was going. Okay, all he'd ever known was life on that island, and suddenly these people turned up and wanted to take him away from it. So you can imagine how scared and anxious he would be about this big journey ahead of him and having absolutely no idea where he was going. He couldn't even speak the language, so he couldn't speak English. So there was no way that he could ask questions, that he could converse with all the people on the boat and then the people in England. He had to learn that, and he had to learn ways to do that. But right at the very beginning, he wouldn't have even been able to talk to them or tell them how he felt. This was really sad, and I know lots of you felt this. So when I've marked your English from last week, he was exchanged for only a button. Okay, and that's how he got his name, Jemmy Button. It was a really precious button that they had. However, they gave his family a button for him to go with him. And I think that's really a hard thing to imagine now, isn't it? And I know lots of you have discussed, and some of us in school as well have discussed, well, that's a little bit like the slave trade, really. There's similarities there, aren't there, to the slave trade and being kind of, that boy was taken away, Jemmy Button was taken away just for a button, like payment for a button. Okay, and the last one, that the family, Jemmy Button's family, will really have been upset and really, really missed him in all that time he was gone. Okay, so reasons that I'm sure you've come up with some of your own reasons, but in case you haven't, there's some reasons there as well to help you out. Okay, so this is what we're going to do next, everybody. All those reasons that we've just looked at and that you've written in your books, we're going to plan our text out together. So I've put on the screen here a structure of what our text is going to look like. We're going to start with an introduction. Then we're going to have, hopefully, aim for 3 paragraphs, everybody. If you don't get that many done today, don't worry. If you could just do 1 paragraph and do it really well, that's absolutely fine. But I'd like everybody today to try and write an introduction, a paragraph, maybe 2, maybe 3, to explain your reasons. So the reasons that we've just been through, you're going to explain those in full, just like the example that we looked at earlier. And then your final one is your conclusion, your summary of the arguments. So if I click onto the next slide now, it's going to show you what you could put in your plan. And I'd like you to have a think about this in a moment and pause the video, because I would like you to now put your ideas. Think about, right, what paragraph am I going to put all of these in? If you want to, you could draw a quick plan like this in your book. Don't worry if you can't do that. You might have a scrap piece of paper that you might want to do it in. But if we were in school, we'd normally now be filling out a planning grid to show where we're going to put our ideas, so that our brains are all sorted to what we're going to write and where. So you can see here in the introduction, I've put, well, we need to state our opinion, we need to tell everybody who Jemmy is, and explain a little bit about Fitzroy's trip as well. I then might go on to talk about the ideas that I've just mentioned, that he might not know where he was. So I might use the example that he was feeling out of place, like the towering buildings. I might use in my next paragraph that he was exchanged for only a button. Now my next one, I've tried to use really emotional language, that he was torn from his homeland. Okay, that he didn't have a choice, I'm trying to make it sound like, and he was torn away from his homeland. The final one, I want to talk about how heartbroken his family was. Okay, before I go on to summarise at the end. And I'll probably use in my summary something like, many people believe that this was an appalling decision to be made. Can you really defend your decision of taking Jemmy Button away? That's the type of thing we're looking for at the end. Okay, so what I'd like you to do, everybody, is to pause the video and create your own plan using your own ideas. You can magpie some of these as well, using the ideas we've talked about, your ideas you've already written in your book. I'd like you to put together now a plan for your own letter. Okay, so pause the video and have maybe 5 minutes to plan it and get all your thoughts in order. Off you go. Okay, everybody, now that you've planned your letter, what I'd like you to do is think about your cohesive devices. So you've planned all your ideas, you know where you're going to put everything, and now you need to think about, okay, so what grammatical things can I add in to make my writing really, really top-notch, like a year 5 or a year 6? So you might want to use some of the conjunctions that are on the table now on the screen in front of you. And I'm sure lots of you would have used those anyway. But conjunctions are really good when writing discussions and arguments because they link things together. Okay, and then on the right hand side you can see lots of adverbials, and they're really all fronted adverbials. You put those at the starts of sentences or at the starts of the paragraphs. Okay, so at the start of a paragraph you might say, in addition to my final point, or in addition to the point I've just made, additionally, as a result of your ridiculous decision to take Jemmy Button away. Okay, so there's some nice ideas there for you to use in your letter today. So I'd like you to pause me again in a moment, because what I would like you to do now is to choose at least 2 conjunctions and at least 2 adverbials that you are going to use today. And I would like you to write those, please, everybody, in your plan or just in your book somewhere that you're going to remember to use them. Okay, so pause the video and choose 2 from each column that you're going to use today. Off you go. Right, so we should all be ready and raring to go now, guys. So you've got your plan, you've got your adverbials, and you've got your conjunctions ready to go. We've had a little bit of a chat about what's going on, and I've now popped a model of the type of thing that you'd be looking at to start you off. So obviously we're writing a letter to Captain Fitzroy. So we're going to start with, Dear Captain Fitzroy. I've not worried about addresses and things like that because I don't know where he lives. So I've just moved straight on to the main content of our letter. So, Dear Captain Fitzroy. Then, as in our plan, I am writing now the statement why I'm writing the letter. I am writing to inform you of my dismay at hearing you removed a young man, Jemmy Button, from his homeland. Okay, so that's my statement. That's my reason for writing. I've already used parenthesis, if you look carefully, everybody, because I've put Jemmy Button in commas. And I've also tried to use quite powerful language like dismay. That means I'm absolutely appalled. I'm really, really sad. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm in dismay. Okay, I've gone on then after that to explain a little bit further about the context of it. So, it is appalling that you think this type of behaviour is acceptable whilst you and your crew are out on expeditions aboard the HMS Beagle. So there, I've tried to kind of explain the circumstances. So I've said I'm appalled. I've said that their behaviour is unacceptable. I've put acceptable, haven't I? Behaviour is acceptable. It's meant to say unacceptable. It's not acceptable at all. Everybody, imagine there's an unacceptable there, because that's just Miss Neil being tired and not writing the right word. That should say unacceptable. Oh no, it does. I'm right. Oh, guys, just ignore everything I'm saying. It's like being actually in class together, isn't it? And me waffling on about nothing. It's the right thing. I have done the right thing. I'm going to read it again. It is appalling that you think this type of behaviour is acceptable. That does make sense. I've done it right. Whilst, so I've tried to use conjunction there, everybody. You and your crew are out on expeditions aboard the HMS Beagle. So I've just put it into the kind of context that we know that they were on the HMS Beagle. We know that fact from reading our story and the work that we've looked at so far. Okay, so that would be my intro. That would be the intro to my letter. And then I would go on to state all of those arguments that we've come up with today. So the first one, I'd start with a conjunction or a fronted adverbial, something like firstly. Okay, and then I'm trying to use emotive language like this innocent child. And I go back to my plan and I'd write up what I had in that first section. Okay, so I'm hoping that all makes sense to you. If you're not sure, then you can always go back through this video and look at the examples that we've had so far. That's probably the best thing to do. Okay, so if you're not sure or you're a little bit confused about what we're doing, just re-watch part of the video again, but you should now have your plan in your book ready to go. And if you'd like to, you could just use this introduction that we've already done. Okay, that's absolutely fine for you to magpie the introduction and then just continue from there if you'd like to. Okay, so good luck. I hope it all goes well. Try and use as many cohesive devices as you possibly can. So if you pause the video now, for as long as it takes you to write the letter, and then I'll pop back on at the end once you finish just to go through a few little bits and bobs. Okay, good luck everybody, get writing. Okay everybody, so hopefully you've had a really good go at your letter. Again, I hope you haven't spent absolutely ages on it. It can just be a couple of paragraphs long, it can be 3 paragraphs long, whatever is best for you. So what I'd like you to do now you've finished, you might have gone off for a drink, had a little snack, I'd like you to read through your letter and just have a little check now that you've done all of these things. So have you stuck to the same side of the argument? Remember, we're doing a one-sided argument here, so it's all on one side. We're not thinking about Captain Fitzroy's point of view, we're just complaining to him. Have you explained all your reasons? So it's not just a list of lots and lots of sentences, you've actually explained what you mean. And have you used your formal voices? So formal vocabulary, formal writing. Okay, so the poshest words that you can possibly think of to make you sound really, really fancy. And then the final thing for today, like we would normally with our green pens in class, I'd like you to have a think now and underline your cohesive devices. So what cohesive devices have you used? Well, all of you should have used some adverbials and conjunctions because you wrote those down earlier when we were doing our plan. But some of you might have also used parenthesis, you might have used different pronouns, you might have used a relative clause, lots of different things that we've been looking at for the past few days. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed today. I hope you've had a really good go at the letter. Can't wait to see them being submitted later and reading through some of those. Okay, everybody, I know we've done it differently today with me on a PowerPoint. It would be lovely to hear in the discussion bit if you liked it this way. Okay, so let me know if you thought this was easier today with me chatting along by the side of you, or if you just were annoyed by my voice and would like to just go back to the old way we did last week. Okay, I won't be offended, I promise, as long as you're not too mean to me. Okay, so let us know how you've got on today, how you found it, and we can't wait to see your letters. Okay, see you tomorrow, guys. Bye.